another decision that we made very early on, was empowering our team. We decided to empower our teams. We had not achieved growth in close to a 10-year period before I started as CEO and the new team sort of took over. I'm proud to tell you that we just released earnings early August, and this was our 11th consecutive quarter of growth.
This is the Leadership Foundry podcast. I'm your host this week, Brandon Smith, and my guest this week is Rohit Verma. Rohit is the CEO of Crawford Company, and they are a global insurance company in 70 different countries. And so not only did I enjoy my conversation with Rohit on his leadership journey, but we talked about the complexity of leading a business across that many different cultures, really across the globe, and some of the challenges and what it means to be a modern CEO today. So really pay attention to our conversation, take lots of notes like I did, and stay tuned at the very end when I share some of the highlights of what I learned from my conversation with Rohit. Rohit, really excited to have you on the show. This has kind of been a long time coming.
Yes.
So I was thrilled when you said you'd be willing to come on.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. It's a little bit of a celebrity moment for me to be on your show.
And for me too. So this show is all about leaders and their journeys and life lessons and leadership lessons. So maybe a good starting place for those folks listening that maybe don't know of Crawford and the role that you have there, and particularly your journey. Maybe tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about your role right now, but then back us all the way up. What got you on this path?
On the path to Crawford or on the path to wanting to be a leader?
Both.
Okay. So I've been with Crawford now for getting close to 6 years. 3.5 of those years have been as CEO. And if you asked me 10 years ago that would I be at a claims company, I probably would have said, probably not. I was doing strategy, I was doing finance, and then suddenly I realized that after being the CFO of a business unit, that it was more fun producing the numbers than adding them up. And so I decided to take the plunge and go into the P&L world. And I was first a little bit nervous going into it because I had never sold an insurance policy in my life, but here I was going to join an insurance company and going to run a P&L, but I absolutely had a blast. I had real fun in growing the business and developing the business and developing people and growing people. And that's when I realized that this is what I wanted to do. So when the opportunity came up at Crawford to come in as the chief operating officer with the potential to have a succession plan into a CEO, I just jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So and you've been CEO then for how long?
About 3 years.
Just over
3 years, yeah.
So what was let's start with kind of your first year as CEO. What was maybe some initial learnings about that role of CEO that surprised you? That maybe you thought to yourself, I watched CEO, I was close to the CEO. I didn't quite know that this was part of the job responsibility because a lot of people have these aspirations of being CEO and it looks glamorous and there's probably some really nice moments in there. But there's also some things that aren't probably as sexy behind the scenes. So tell us a little bit about what was some of your learnings.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, April 27th, I distinctly remember, April 27th of 2020, so we were in the pandemic, is when the formal announcement was made. Obviously, I knew a little bit before that, but a formal announcement was made. And when I read the announcement, I had a little bit of that moment when you say, oh my God, what did I just sign up for? And
you saw it on paper.
I saw
That's
it on
my
paper.
name, and it says CEO. There it is.
And it's one of those things at a moment that you wait for, right? And you work towards, and then when it happens, you just say, "Oh my God, this has happened. Like now what?" And I was super nervous, and I thought, we're in the middle of the pandemic. I'm going to take over this organization. I've never really handled a claim in my life, per se. I mean, I've been part of the insurance industry for a long time, but to handle a claim, and I was like, I don't know if I made the right decision. And we were supposed to have the formal handover on May 15th, and everything was virtual as you would imagine. And then on May 15th, when the former CEO sort of proverbially shook my hand and sort of said, over to you now, I don't know what happened, but something changed, something clicked, and I suddenly became confident. I suddenly felt like, okay, I know what to do. And it wasn't like, I had read 5 books 3 days before and I was like, okay, now I know what the CEO job is and I'm ready. But something clicked. Something in me told me that I was ready. And after that, I never looked back.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So you gave a real high level of your journey to Crawford in that role. Now, you had spent some time at McKinsey, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so you were doing strategy consulting.
Correct.
So what's different between strategy consulting
yes.
at the level of McKinsey, which is at the very highest level, to actually, defining your own strategy, leading a company? What's similar, but also more importantly, what's different?
I would say the biggest difference is that when you are at a consulting firm, and no matter what consulting firm you are in, you are still the person who is an outsider. And sometimes you need that outside perspective. That's why you bring a consulting firm in. And you're advising, but you really don't have to live with the consequences of what you advise, right? I mean, as a consulting firm, you'll live with the consequences because if you provide bad advice, then you're not going to get more work.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, right, when your employees, when your customers, when your board, when your shareholders, they look at you, and that is very different, and that feeling is very different.
Yeah. So it's a little more on your shoulders.
Yes, a little more on our shoulder. The analytical part, the intellectual curiosity, the requirement to think big, those remain the same. And that's probably why you see a lot of individuals from the consulting world eventually move into the business world because they like that aspect and that's a skill that they develop and grow. But the biggest difference is, you own your advice.
Yeah. So now let's go to year 2. Okay, so year 1, so tricky time to come in as a first-time CEO.
Yep.
Middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know how many people know this at Crawford, but I'll share with you on your show. But when so May 11th, I distinctly remember, is when Atlanta shut down, or when May 11th of 2020 is when everybody said, okay, we're shutting down, we're going home. And I remember I used to live in Chicago at the time, so I was commuting between here and Chicago. From the car, I called our chairman, and I said, his name is Charlie, and I said to Charlie, Charlie, I understand that, we've got a pandemic, nobody knows what's happening in capital markets, nobody knows, what's happening with the banks, what's going to happen with our business, right? All this uncertainty. And I called him and I said, look, if at this point you think, because we had not made any announcement, nothing was public, there were only a very small group in the board, well, I guess the board knew, but very small group that knew about this. And I said, if you think we should wait till the end of the year or till next year and let the current CEO be there, because you need you would want an experienced, a stable hand on the steering wheel, I'm fine with that. Like, I'm not going to run and quit just because we've delayed something. And I distinctly remember Charlie's word. He said, no, the board had made a decision and we were confident in our choice and we're going to move forward. So I did definitely have that moment where I thought, okay, you know what, this pandemic, nobody knows how it's going to pan out.
And now you're here. You're through it.
I'm here. Yeah.
So let's go to year 2.
Yeah.
Any learnings in year 2? What did you learn as a CEO in year 2 that maybe surprised you?
Well, so, very early on, what we decided as a management team that we were going to prioritize the safety and well-being of our employees. That was very, very high on our priority list. And we wanted to make sure, we sort of had three objectives, right? One, let's make sure the safety and well-being of our employees. Second, let's just make sure that our service levels don't fall for our customers to the best of our ability. Obviously, we were not going to the reason we put our employees first is because we never wanted to put any of our employees in harm's way. Right, so that was number 1, followed by customer excellence, and the third was to make sure that we maintain and strengthen the financial aspect of the company or the balance sheet of the company. So those were the 3 objectives that we set out, and year 2, I would say that as we reflected back, and we had really good results in year 1. I mean, we were down in terms of revenue compared to what we were in the prior year, and we were down in terms of earnings, but the health of the company in terms of our balance sheet, in terms of what our customers said about us, in terms of how our employees felt was really good. And that was a reaffirmation that to me, those 3 things that I just talked about are not just relevant when the times are tough, like we had during COVID, but those are three things that should be universal. So we established those three things as our universal priorities, right? Priorities of the business change. You want to grow some places, you want to shrink some places, you want to improve profitability, you want to transform the business. Those priorities change and shift, and you can call them operating priorities. But to me, these three things became universal priorities, right? Prioritizing our employees, prioritizing our customers, and then maintaining the financial health of the company, as those three things sort of became the universal priorities. Like, that's never going to change.
And when you say it, it sounds like that's the batting order. Is that right?
That is the batting order. That's
okay,
exactly right.
Okay.
Because I think that the third, which is the financial stability, if you do the first two right, the third automatically follows.
Is it hard to keep those in that priority?
It is. It can be hard, right? Because you can get distractions that come from different places, right? You can have a customer who wants you to do things that may not be in the best interest of your employees. You can have financial stakeholders who can put pressure on you to do things that may not be in the best interest, long-term best interest of your customers or your employees. So it can be hard, but I think by defining those three and keeping them in my aperture every day and the aperture of the leadership team, I think it makes it better. And I'll put in a little bit of a plug for you and Randy here, right? You guys did a fabulous job working with us in getting our team prepared to stay and have that alignment. The work that we did to create the mutual respect and admiration between our team, I thought was really, really important, because it was very important for us, for our teams to make sure that we were thinking together, not just thinking alike. And I think you guys helped us get comfortable with that you don't have to think alike, you just have to think together.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad we were able to assist. So what I love about your role is the messiness and complexity of it, Rohit. Because all CEO roles are hard. I mean, we know that, right? They're all hard jobs.
I find your job hard, by the way. But
well, thanks. Well, what is so, I think, fun and complicated about yours is you have such a global footprint. So I want you to share a little bit about kind of where Crawford operates. But you also have the cultural differences amongst that global footprint. And because weather is such a factor with claims, then you're looking at the weather across the globe on a pretty regular basis. So it's got so many moving parts. So share a little bit about some of either both what's fun about that, but also what's challenging about that.
You know, I often say that our customers need us on typically the worst day of their life, right? Unfortunately, they've lost their home, they've lost their car, God forbid they've injured themselves or lost a loved one. And in some ways, believe it or not, it's very fulfilling, right? Because you're actually the one person or the one organization that's going to go and help those customers and sort of get back on their feet. So it's a very fulfilling role from that standpoint. Yes, what gets complicated, we do operate in 70 countries.
70?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would say
almost every, is it every continent?
It's every continent, of course, other than Antarctica.
Well,
but we're on every continent. But what's interesting about that is that you realize that that's when you definitely need a phone or a watch which can tell you world time, because you definitely can't always keep track of what's happening where and when. But I think what's complicated about the role, but what that also makes it interesting, is the problem solving that comes with it, right? You're trying to solve global challenges, and you're trying to solve them in ways where you can still maintain the consistency in how you present yourself to your customers. Right? At the end of the day, Crawford is a brand, and we want the brand to be represented in every country, with every customer in a consistent manner, and that creates a level of challenge, particularly when it's cross-culture. But I've got a great team, and I think the team really works well with each other. Another decision that we made very early on, was empowering our team. We decided to empower our teams. We had not achieved growth in close to a 10-year period before I started as CEO and the new team sort of took over. I'm proud to tell you that we just released earnings early August, and this was our 11th consecutive quarter of growth.
Congratulations.
And I think
11th consecutive quarter.
Yes, 11th consecutive quarter.
And how many quarters have you been CEO?
12.
Okay. So, there was one there.
Yeah,
there was one.
There was one there.
But that's fantastic. That is incredible, Rohit.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
And I think the biggest difference is that we said to our teams, like, don't let anything hold you back. Obviously, we have to be ethical and moral and do things in a compliant manner, but we said nothing should be holding you back. There was definitely a viewpoint at one point within the company that, all decisions had to be routed through Atlanta.
Right.
And it was probably the right decision at the time, given the state of the company. But I think that was a habit that got developed, and then we never got rid of that habit. And coming in as an outsider, which is how I came in, and sort of being curious and asking questions about why. Like, I used to ask a question, like, every request to add an adjuster had to be approved in Atlanta. And I said, why?
Wow.
Why? Why does it have to be approved in Atlanta? And I felt that what it resulted in doing, because everything had to come for approval, what it resulted in doing is our leaders, our next sort of level of leaders, losing their ability to critically think, losing their ability to make tough decisions, and because everything could be delegated to back up, right? To say, well, it's not my decision. Somebody told me to do it.
Right.
And I think we changed that. And we said, look, you're empowered, you're responsible. At the end of the day, I'm going to hold you accountable to a budget. How you get to that budget, as long as, again, it's it's compliant, it's legal, it's ethical, is up to you. And I think that made a pretty big difference in terms of people realizing, like, I can make decisions. At the end of the day, I feel everybody wakes up wanting to do a great job.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know anybody who's woken up today and said, I want to go to work today and want to make sure I make everybody's life miserable and screw up everything that I do. It's just not what people wake up for.
Yeah.
So if you start with that thought process and you said, everybody's waking up wanting to do a great job, and my job as a leader is to just make sure that no obstacle comes in their way for them to do a great job for themselves. And I think that if you unlock greatness in people, personal greatness, it unlocks greatness for the organization. And that's sort of been a philosophy for me that I think has worked.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there. So first, I think you hit on something really important that all CEOs wrestle with and have to ultimately make a decision on. Centralization, decentralization.
Yes.
Right? And there's pluses and minuses to each.
Yeah.
Be fully decentralized, and it makes sense in your business if you were fully decentralized in one way, because you could make decisions at the country level,
correct,
the cultural level,
but
then you run into brand inconsistency, right? And then also always get the economies of scale. Or you can go very centralized and all decisions get made at headquarters. You can control cost spending a little bit more, but then you lose that flexibility and you try and make one size fits all, and it doesn't really work well for a global company. So it sounds like you found a way to kind of navigate in that to get to that sweet spot. And empowerment was part of that. Now, I know we've had conversations over the years around empowerment.
Yes.
And there's this balance. And by the way, all the CEOs that I work with, empowerment's always their goal. They want to get there, but I don't think they've gotten as far down that path as you have. Because we have empowerment, and then we always end up with this other word, accountability. So how did you figure out a way to make those things work? How does that work for you in practice?
And I would say that I think it's a balance, and I'm not sure that we've struck the right balance everywhere where we want to do that either, right? So it is a journey, and I don't know if this is a journey which ever ends. I'll give you a very simple story that happened just, as a matter of fact, just day before yesterday. So Pat Van Bakel, who you know, who is the CEO of our North America business, he and I were in New York, and we had just landed. We were both wearing suits. We had our bags with us, and we went to a restaurant to have dinner with a client. And we were there early. It was an early dinner, and we got there early because we were coming straight from the airport. So I think our reservations were for 5:30. We were there at about 5:10. We approached the maitre d' and we say, we have a reservation. She said, yes, Mr. Verma, I have a reservation for you. Is everybody in your party here? And I said, no, it's going to be 3 of us. 2 of us are here, and then we have a client. She said, well, you have to wait till I can seat you. And I peeked inside the restaurant, and 90% of the restaurant was empty.
Yeah, it's 5:10 in New York.
It's 5:10 in New York.
Dinner doesn't start till like 7:30 in New York.
So the restaurant was empty. So I waited for a couple of minutes, and then I approached her again, and I said, we have our bags, and we've just come from a flight. Is it okay that you get us seated? And I'm sure I've just confirmed with our guest because I texted him, and he'll be here before 5:30. She said, we don't really seat until everybody arrives. I waited for another couple of minutes, and then I said, you know what, I'm just going to have a conversation. I said, ma'am, you see us, we have a reservation, so it's not like we've just shown up. You see that we're holding bags. You see that we're wearing a suit. It's kind of hot outside, and I just told you that we've landed. why won't you seat us? So she said, are you asking me to make an exception? And I said, yes, I'm asking you to make an exception. And she said, well, hold on a second. I have to ask my supervisor. She goes in, comes back, and she says, okay, my supervisor said, okay. Now, what I said to her is, I said, I really think that given how empty the restaurant was, you should have allowed us to sit down. And I said, you missed a revenue opportunity, because we would have sat down and probably ordered some drinks or something, right? Because we had both landed.
Right.
And she said, sir, I don't make the rules. And I just sat down. But to me, that was a case of empowerment. To me, it was like, of course, I get it. If the restaurant was 90% full, you have two guys who've shown up. You don't want to get them seated until everybody comes in because you don't want to block tables. But if 90% of the restaurant is actually empty, there was literally one table, I think, that had people in it. If 90% of the restaurant is empty, then why won't you actually seat people down? And that was, to me, that was a empowerment issue, because she was not empowered to make the right decision in the interest of the clients and, frankly, the interest of the company or the restaurant in that case, and missed an opportunity.
Yeah, so what I love about your story is if we go back to your 3 filters, right? So it wasn't, making that decision wasn't going to endanger employees in any way.
Correct.
Wasn't going to affect employees' wellness or safety.
Yep.
Right. Great opportunity to serve a customer, meet a customer's needs.
Correct.
Without any kind of collateral damage.
That's right.
And that would result in more revenue.
Correct.
And more profitability.
Exactly.
So you could kind of go right through your checklist and be like, check, check, check.
Yeah.
The decision should have been made.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.
And I think that we still have, if I look at and reflect our business, I think we still have pockets where we might be doing the right thing in terms of following every rule that we may have established, but we're missing the context for those rules. And I think that empowerment is so much about context and understanding context. And our job as leaders is to empower, but then also just continuously provide context to our employees, context to our teams, so that they can make decisions in context. Again, we never want people to go astray,
right,
and do things which are unethical or immoral or non-compliant. And we want them to follow policy, right? That's why we establish policy. But you got to have context in what you're doing.
So when you say context, what do you mean by that?
What's important at this time? What's relevant at this time? Right? What is my decision-making framework at this time? For that maitre d', the decision-making framework was, it's only 5:10. There is nobody else who's coming, which is going to fill up my restaurant in the next 10, 20 minutes. They have reservation already. It's at 5:30. And I can see these gentlemen, they clearly look like, they're here for business. And I can actually make their life a little bit better by having them getting seated, by taking their bags in, and by offering them, water or something so that they can have a better evening.
Right.
So she missed that context from my perspective. Yeah. Because what was told to her was that your job is to follow the rules. Your job is not. The job wasn't defined as your job is to make sure that every customer has a wonderful experience when they get here. Your job is to make sure everybody gets seated, make sure you follow the rules, make sure you look at the job was written as a job description of the skills as opposed to the capabilities that you expect in your people to have. And that's the other piece that I always feel like we need to hire people for their capabilities, not for their skills.
Oh, it's fantastic. Okay, we're getting close to the end.
Okay.
But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. Okay, so I had the pleasure of doing 360 interviews for you when you started as CEO.
That's true. I'm still worried about what all you know about me that I don't know about myself.
And one of my favorite all-time interviews and quotes was from someone, I'm not going to say the name, but the person said, Rohit is a modern CEO. And what a compliment.
I would take that as a compliment.
I would take it as a total compliment because they saw in you traits of historic CEOs, what we think of CEOs, but really relevant, as you mentioned the word relevant, relevant to today, relevant to what it means to lead a global business today. Yeah. So when you think of modern CEO, what does modern CEO mean to you? Well,
first of all, I would say that if you go to the redwood forest, a 100-year tree also feels young and looks young. So maybe it was just a comparison to other CEOs that this person has worked with. I think when I just compare myself to other CEOs that I've worked with or worked for, one thing I've always done is I've tried to learn. I try to learn anywhere or everywhere I can, right? I feel like there's always learnings around us, and you have to absorb the learnings. So, there are things like where I've worked with CEOs who printed every email, literally.
Oh, wow.
Right? Back in the day, I remember that this CEO would just have his assistant print every email, and he would literally write his response on the email and hand it over to his assistant, who would then type it in.
Wow.
Right? So yes, I'm modern from that standpoint. I do not print my emails. In fact, I work on my devices 99% of the time. I also think that I've worked with CEOs who don't provide direct access to themselves, right?
Oh.
And they do it in the name of protecting their time. They do it in the name of allowing their team to do the work. And my philosophy is that I'm always accessible to my people. If I have a town hall, I tell people, look, my phone number, my email, my LinkedIn is all listed on our company directory. There's no secret doors to getting to me. So maybe I'm modern from that standpoint. I'm also modern from the standpoint of that I believe in being as transparent as I can be. Again, making sure that I'm not being non-compliant. Like if someone asks me today, what our earnings for Q3 is going to be, I'm not going to say that, just in the spirit of being transparent. So, I'm also very focused on transparency. I do this town hall. I remember when I was taking over CEO, and I sat down with Michelle Montgomery, who is our Chief Marketing Communication Officer. And I said that I want to do something where people can ask me any question, like no questions off the table. And you can make it anonymous so that nobody fears that there could be a consequence. And I did that because I wanted people to ask me difficult questions. Because if it's on their mind, then it's on other people's mind. And they won't have a forum to ask that because they're afraid to ask that.
Yeah.
And then I also told her that we're not going to filter any question that comes in. Like I do not want any question that's coming in to be filtered. Of course, if there is bad language or profanity or something like that, then suppress it. But do not suppress any question. And I think that has helped me be a better leader, because I think that it has enabled people to ask me questions that I might be afraid of answering sometimes. But because I have given everybody the permission to ask me that, I now can't back off. So it's just helped me be a better leader. So I'm probably modern from that standpoint.
Okay.
And I wear jeans to work, so maybe that's the other thing.
Maybe that was really what it was.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
The whole time.
Yeah.
So if we think about, I ask all my guests this question. So as we're kind of landing our plane here today, what is one practical tip you might have for leaders listening to this today that they can start to put in place tomorrow to lead their people and their organizations that much more effectively?
I would say what I said earlier, which is start with the belief that everybody wants to do a great job. And it's as easy as it sounds, it's actually pretty hard.
Say more.
Because it's easy to say that, but think about it. When someone makes a mistake, you say, I don't know why he did that, or I don't know why she did that, right? You're already attributing it that she wanted to. That's why you're trying to find the reason he or she did. And I just think it's hard to do that. You have to start with that, and you have to say, you know what? I have to figure out, like, there must be a reason why this happened. Was the person misinformed? Was the person having a perception that didn't exist? Was the person not correctly trained? Because knowingly the person would not want to do this. Right? Deliberately this person would not want to do this. And I just think it's hard to do that. I also believe that it helps you be more accepting. And when you are more accepting, it creates room for you to actually act. Because what happens is when you're not accepting, your brain just gets stuck at, why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? Why did he do it? Why did she do it? Versus, this has happened. I've accepted it that this has happened. Now what are we going to do about it? And I think that we end up spending more time in the whys than what we're going to do next. So I think just starting with that of saying, you know what, everybody's wanting to do a great job, I think can make a huge difference in terms of how you perceive everybody around you and, frankly, your own happiness level.
And almost like we're checking off their motives. You don't have to question their motives.
Exactly.
You're assuming they're good.
Yeah.
And now you can move on to what's next.
Yeah.
Rohit, this was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. If people want to learn more about you or Crawford, where can they go?
They could go to www.crawfordandcompany.com.
Excellent. Absolute gift having you here, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great being here.
I found my conversation with Rohit absolutely fascinating. So many nuggets, so many highlights. Few things I really want to draw our attention to. First, I love that we kept coming back to his 3 pillars. Employees first, their health and wellness. Then we go to customers, and then we go to P&L. And I love that he uses that as his framework, and every decision kind of rolls back into that. All the way down to how he tries to really encourage employees to be empowered, and then balancing that with accountability. And on that note, we spent a lot of time talking about what it means to lead people in those ways. And even to the very end, when we talked about the practical tip he gave, he said, everybody wakes up wanting to do a great job. I think that's such a simple reminder, but such a good one. We don't spend time questioning people's motives. We move right into, so what went wrong and what could we do differently? What a great way and what a powerful way to lead people today. So no wonder why Rohit was termed a modern CEO. I hope you took away some nuggets from the conversation that you can start to put into your toolkit starting tomorrow.